Hello everybody, this is Dr. Cole. It's Sunday, April 13th. This will be the week 13 announcement for Political Science 1013, Spring 25, on the 16-week schedule. Everybody, it's Sunday as I'm recording this. This may go up on the website sometime Sunday afternoon or evening, or I may have to wait until Monday morning the 14th. So generally, my students may be seeing this either Sunday or Monday, so I hope that will be okay. We'll try to get it up no later than Monday morning. Everybody, we are through with exam 3 now, and we're heading for the final exam at the end of the term. Let's see now. A couple of things we have coming up. Our final exam will be Thursday, May 8th, in about a month. Our last discussion 6, will be at the end of the month, the 28th and 29th. That's based on a lengthy interview published in the New York Times with Senator Lankford, who will be the senator for many of my students, along with Senator Mullin, those who are from Oklahoma. So that is coming up later, and by then we will be trying to move from Unit 7 on the Supreme Court to Unit 8 on Congress. So we have the final May 8th, the discussion on April 28th and 29th. April 25th, everybody, Friday the 25th, is the deadline for contacting me if you would like to do a term paper. You need to contact me by then about your topic. All right. Everybody, we have Unit 7 on the Supreme Court and Unit 8 on Congress to finish up the term. And I will be talking about Unit 7 on the Supreme Court today and next week. And then 2 messages after that will be about Unit 8 on Congress. So the exam will be based on the class notes for Unit 7 and 8, plus 4 things we've asked you to access online. Okay. Everybody, let me just say this. These big national papers, the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, are offering their subscribers gift links so that you can send an article to someone who's not a subscriber as a gift. And I've included some of those, so I hope that will make it easier for you to access some of these articles. A couple of the other articles are from sites that are free of charge to click on in any case, I believe. So I hope we won't have too much trouble accessing these articles this time around. The library website should still work for Wall Street Journal articles. I don't believe we have anything from the Wall Street Journal this time. In any case, what we have for the final exam, just a moment please, everybody bear with me. Right, okay, the first thing you have is a piece from Adam Liptick of the New York Times about Justice Amy Coney Barrett of the Supreme Court. Now, this is kind of important because Justice Barrett was a Trump nominee near the end of his first term, really going back to just before the 2020 election. She's someone who sometimes has gotten off the reservation and doesn't always do what Trump wants. So it's believed she may be an important swing vote in upcoming cases, so you want to take a look at that. Then you have a piece from the Washington Post by Jason Willick. And what this has to do with a number of things the Trump administration has done has been challenged in court. The administration has got its way sometimes and other times not. And there's been some murmurings from Congress and within the administration especially about impeaching judges who didn't do what the administration wanted. And Chief Justice John Roberts immediately pushed back on that. So Mr. Willick discusses, his piece is called, "Can the Supreme Court Diffuse Trump's Judicial Brawl?" Okay, and among other things, this discusses, I think we may have had a recent piece raising the issue, what might happen if the Supreme Court issued a ruling and the administration didn't want to abide by it. Okay, well, this is an article that will touch on a question like that, I believe. All right. Then we have an article about Senator Markwayne Mullin. Now, your two senators, for those of you who are from Oklahoma, not all our students are, I know, but you're reading one piece for the exam about Senator Lankford, and our other senator is Senator Mark Wayne Mullin, and this article is a brief profile of Senator Mark Wayne Mullin. Okay. Then the final article from the website liberalpatriot.com is called Congress Has Only Itself to Blame for Doge, D-O-G-E, that's Elon Musk's, of course, Department of Government Efficiency, as the Trump administration is calling it. Well, why was it left to Trump and Elon Musk to do this, to go into the federal bureaucracy with a chainsaw and try to make budget cuts and firings where they deem it necessary? And the author of this piece, Mr. Bergat, suggests the reason why is that Congress hasn't been doing a proper job of oversight all these years. Legislation is one of its jobs, but also oversight. And perhaps if a better job of oversight had been done, it wouldn't have been necessary for Elon Musk to go after the federal bureaucracy with a chainsaw. Okay, so that's what you're asked to look at for the final exam. Most of your exam items will be on Unit 7 and 8, the class notes, but there'll also be those 4 articles to look at. All right, everybody, let me just get started on the class notes for Unit 7, and we'll finish up with that next time. The Supreme Court, Unit 7 is almost entirely about the Supreme Court, which is at the top of the hierarchy in the federal court system. Beneath those are the U.S. district courts and the circuit courts of appeal. Of course, that's just the federal court system. There are, of course, courts at the state and local level as well. The Supreme Court generally hears all its cases on appeal. There are a couple of very narrow categories where it can have original jurisdiction, but mostly, for practical purposes, it is hearing cases that come from a U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals or perhaps a state Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, of course, is a constitutional court. Okay. It gets to say what's constitutional and what's not. And if a law or an action by the president or someone else in the government if the majority feels it's in conflict with the Constitution, then that law or that action can be declared unconstitutional. So the power to say that something is constitutional or not lies with the Supreme Court, because the idea is that the Constitution is the highest law, and anything that would conflict with it would be null and void. The Supreme Court has that power, gives it what we call the power of judicial review, and we discuss in the class notes how the Supreme Court claimed the power of judicial review for the first time in a case that I believe goes back to 1803 or so. Double check me on that. It's very, very early in American history. We go through some detail about how the Supreme Court does its business. There may be thousands of cases appealed to it every year, but it will select maybe between 50 and 200 of those to hear in a typical term. So by no means will they take every case that is appealed to them. And if they decline to take the case, then the lower court ruling stands. Okay. We talk about how the Supreme Court does its business, how it discusses cases. Oral argument before the Supreme Court will be the last thing they do. Well, not necessarily the last thing, but oral argument will generally last about an hour, 30 minutes or so for each side, and then they will discuss cases in conference before issuing a ruling. Be familiar with such terminology as majority, concurring, and dissenting opinions. Now, everybody, something very, very important is the issue of the Supreme Court as, shall we say, a political football. We have part of the class notes, a section entitled "The Supreme Court is a Political Institution." And there will be those who will insist, well, it shouldn't really be a political institution. It's a legal institution. But it's hard to keep the politics out of the Supreme Court. Sometimes they look to us like a 9-person legislature, with Republicans having a 6-3 majority right now based on the presidents who appointed those 9 people and the parties those presidents represented. It's not really supposed to be that way. people will tell you, including justices of the Supreme Court themselves, that they may make decisions with political significance, but they're not supposed to do it in just the same way that the legislature would. The legislature is acting strictly on the basis of their political preferences, whereas the Supreme Court has the responsibility to interpret the Constitution and say what is consistent with the Constitution and what is not. Matters such as abortion, going back before the lifetime of most of my students, have turned the positions on the Supreme Court into political footballs, if you will. Whenever there's a vacancy these days, and the president considers nominees, those nominees are always discussed in public and in the press according to whether they're conservative, liberal, or middle of the road, and we would rather expect that Republicans would nominate conservative ones, and Democratic presidents would nominate liberals. Okay? It's not supposed to be just like a partisan legislature, but that element has entered into it. Because, you might say, if you have a constitution with ambiguous language, and you empower a court like the Supreme Court to interpret that, then you're giving an awful lot of power to that court. And so perhaps it's not surprising that what the court has done and the issue of who should be nominated to it when vacancies arise has become a big political issue in American politics. And those 9 positions on the court are regarded as big political prizes. We see that in some of the very acrimonious struggles that have taken place when vacancies arise and controversial nominations have been made to the Supreme Court. That goes all the way back to the Reagan administration with Judge Robert Bork, whom you'll be reading about, who was not confirmed, although Reagan nominated him. And then we move through the issue of what happened to Clarence Thomas, who did make it onto the Supreme Court, and the 3 people nominated to the court, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, by Donald Trump during his first term. We mentioned sometimes a nomination amounts to a sort of extension of political recognition. That can apply to women on the court, and also African Americans or Hispanic people who may be nominated. Once Clarence Thomas replaced Thurgood Marshall, who was the first black justice, and informally speaking, that place on the court has come to be thought of as the black seat on the Supreme Court, no matter what you might think of that. Justice Sotomayor could be thought of as occupying the Hispanic seat, if you will. All right then, everybody, we will try to look next time at some of the more controversial, prominent, important landmark decisions of the Supreme Court. Those come at the very end of the class notes. So we'll try to finish up on Unit 7 next time. So deadline's coming up. Term paper topic deadline is the 25th. The last discussion is going to be at the very end of the month on the 28th and 29th. And our final exam, let me double check on that one more time. So is it the 8th or the 9th? I can't remember. Bring up Canvas here. All right. That's right, Thursday, May 8th for the final exam. Sorry about that. Thursday, May 8th. Okay, everybody, we'll finish up on Unit 7 on the Supreme Court a week from now at this time. Meantime, study hard, take it easy. Contact me with any questions, issues, or problems through the course website or at david.cole@opsu.edu. Take it easy.